Hey guys, this is Warhawk Beyond 2040 bringing to you another edition of the Spider-Man review series, and once again I'm here to talk about another favourite episode of mine from Season 1, and I am dedicating this review to another one of my good friends who just recently watched this episode, and he said to me that there were a couple of issues he had with this episode, and having just revisited the entire animated series of Spider-Man and this episode in particular, I can see exactly what he was talking about, but those little issues don't take away from the fact that this episode was still damn fantastic, and it was a lot of fun, especially due to the fact that one of the main key characters of the Spider-Man mythos played a huge role in the story of this episode. And the episode I am going to be talking about is The Sting of the Scorpion. Now, just as the name of the episode says, this episode features the debut of the Scorpion, and Scorpion has always been one of my favourite Spider-Man villains for many years, and this episode is pretty much an adaptation of Amazing Spider-Man issue 20 back in 1965, which featured the debut of the Scorpion. And the Scorpion has been one of Spider-Man's greatest enemies for many years. He's very big, very strong, and very quick and agile for a guy his size, and these two have had a number of fights over the years. But what I always remembered about the Scorpion in the comic books, and even in the 1967 cartoon, was Scorpion was mostly portrayed as very silly and didn't really have a lot going for it. But when they introduced him into the 90s animated series, I thought they did a fantastic job with the way they had written him, and they fleshed him out more so he wasn't just some big goofball in a green suit. And I like the fact that Scorpion wasn't really a bad person to start with. He wasn't very bright because he was always picked on and made fun of, but I like what the show did with him, and I thought they did an excellent job with the way they handled his origin story. And one of the main reasons why this episode is one of my favourites, and it's in my top 10 favourites of Season 1, is the role that J. Jonah Jameson played in this episode in terms of the Scorpion's origin story. Now, throughout most of the Spider-Man mythos, we always have seen J. Jonah Jameson as this disgruntled, bitter publisher who hates Spider-Man, but I liked the reason they gave him for hating Spider-Man so much in this episode, and we see a flashback where Jameson is a young man trying to follow up on a story on a mystery man in a mask, and we see that this mystery man in the mask threatens Jameson to back off the story or else, and of course Jameson pays a very heavy price because we see the casualty is none other than his wife, who is murdered by the same mystery man in the mask that Jameson was chasing up on. And Jameson explains that a long time ago I was following up on a story and a man in a mask told me to back off, but I didn't. But instead of going after me, he went after my wife and he murdered her, and that's why I hate people like Spider-Man who hide behind masks and think they're above the law. So I thought that was a really good reason for Jameson hating Spider-Man and just men in masks in general. But at the same time, I do have to question one thing about that, because I remember in the episode Menace of Mysterio, you could clearly see that Mysterio was not a good guy, but Jameson was actually endorsing him and, putting him over, that Mysterio is a real hero. So depending on who you ask, really, I do find that a bit hypocritical of Jameson, because he hates men in the mask like Spider-Man, but he's not afraid to suck up to guys like Mysterio or even the Scorpion for that matter. It's just really funny, but at the same time very bizarre. But I thought Jameson's motivations for wanting Spider-Man out of the way was a very good reason, and even more reason to hate him. So I thought the show did an excellent job with the way they handled Jameson's story, and we even got treated to a little flashback as well, so even better. And also in this episode we are introduced to Mack Gargan for the first time. Now, just like in the comic book, Mack Gargan was a private eye detective who was hired by J. Jonah Jameson to basically follow Peter Parker and learn the truth about how he's able to get pictures of Spider-Man for the Daily Bugle. But in recent years, as we've seen, they've made Mack Gargan more of a serious criminal / killer. But here in the animated series, and even in the comic book, Mack Gargan is a little bit short, a little bit chubby, not very bright, and Jameson basically asks Gargan, "Did you find out how Peter Parker gets those pictures?" And Gargan says, "No, I'm so sorry, Mr. Jameson, but that Parker kid got away from me." And Jameson says, "Oh, you're absolutely useless, Gargan. You can't do anything, can you?" And Gargan takes it to heart by saying, "Oh, come on, Jameson, give me a break. People have been making fun of me my whole life and calling me names. Just cut a guy some slack." And then we see Spider-Man threatens Jameson by saying to him that, "Look, back off, Jameson, or there'll be real trouble." But obviously those lines hit Jameson hard because we see a quick flashback of the day Jameson's wife was murdered, and this gives him the exact motivation he needs to have Spider-Man eliminated once and for all. And he pretty much offers this opportunity to Gargan by saying, "Tell me something, Gargan. How would you like to make a real name for yourself by going toe-to-toe with Spider-Man himself and taking him out?" And Gargan, of course, is not going to say no. Says, "Me? Take out Spider-Man? I'd kill for the chance." And Jameson says, "Good. Then I'll have it all set up. I've got one final ace in my sleeve to have Spider-Man out of my hair once and for all." And he contacts Dr. Stillwell. Now, everyone remembers Dr. Stillwell is head of the neogenics radiation. Now, neogenics radiation, as we've seen throughout the course of the series, neogenics radiation helped create the Lizard, and it also turned Peter Parker into Spider-Man. So, depending on how you look at it, whenever the name neogenics gets mentioned, nothing good ever comes out of it. And with this episode, it's no exception. So we then see Mack Gargan in the Scorpion suit is blasted with radiation with Dr. Stillwell and Jameson present. And Mack Gargan says, "What is this stuff? I feel strange." And Stillwell says, "It's okay, it's just the radiation." And Gargan nervously asks, "Radiation? Isn't that stuff dangerous?" And Jameson says, "Gargan, don't chicken out on me now. This is what you wanted." And Gargan starts getting taller and taller and his voice starts breaking. Says, "Yeah, I know, Mr. Jameson. I just want to know what's going on here." And Jameson, very concerned in his voice, says, "Stillwell, what's happening to him?" Goes, "It's okay. I've used the Scorpion combined with the radiation because the Scorpion is an ideal predator for the spider." And before we knew it, we see Gargan is twice his size and over 8 feet tall in the Scorpion suit. And Jameson says, "At last, Spider-Man will finally meet his match." And we see Gargan standing there screaming like, "Ah!" So I have to say, this was quite a dark moment for a superhero cartoon, because whenever you have origin stories about how someone becomes a villain, it's not normally that dark, because I would have always thought that you just blast the guy with radiation and then smoke clears and boom, he's there. But you actually see the guy get blasted and you see him just slowly grow taller and taller, and you see all his bones and all his muscles just stretched out. I mean, it looked really, really painful. And you see Gargan in the suit, you see his voice slowly changing, and the next thing you know, he becomes the Scorpion. It's quite a scary moment. Maybe not to the degree like Kirk Langstrom turning into Man-Bat, or even Dr. Kurt Connors turning into the Lizard, but it's still quite frightening for a cartoon. But I thought the way they handled it here was very well done, and once again, this wouldn't be the first time that the Spider-Man animated series would adapt the horror aspects. And they did a superb job doing that here once again. Shortly after, we see Mack Gargan in his new Scorpion form, with Jameson communicating with him over the radio, go after Spider-Man. And I have to say that this was a really good fight scene, and we hear Jameson speak to Gargan over the radio saying, "You ready for your big moment, Gargan?" And Gargan in his new voice says, "I'm ready." And this was, as I said, a really good fight, because by this point I don't think Spider-Man had encountered any big guys. So Scorpion marks the first time that Spider-Man's had to fight someone much bigger and stronger than him, and this fight didn't disappoint one bit. And even when Spider-Man went to hit him, he hurt his hand because his whole suit is made of like metal, and Spider-Man just hurts his hand by saying, "What the hell are you made of? Adamantium? Just who the hell are you?" And Scorpion says, "A real hero, wall crawler." And we see him throw him into the water tower. And this was the moment where I can see what my friend was talking about with the issue that he had with the Scorpion, which is coming up right here. After Scorpion threw Spider-Man into the water tower, Scorpion looks at his reflection in the puddle, and we see Scorpion's entire face and skin turn green, his eyes turn yellow, and he starts developing fangs. Now, I can see what he was talking about, because after getting blasted by radiation with Dr. Stillwell and Jameson, over the course of the episode we see Scorpion grow bigger and bigger and bigger until he's like about nearly 8 or 9 feet tall, and his voice starts getting deeper and deeper. And yeah, I can see what he's talking about, because you see him mutate into the suit. Now, he complains throughout the episode, "I'm stuck in this suit, get me out of it, change me back to normal." And this was something that they would later adapt into several video games years after. And I do have to question this, because how does he get back to normal? Because the next time we see the Scorpion was in Season 2, where he joins up with the Insidious Six, and you see Mack Gargan is back to normal. No green skin, no yellow eyes, no fangs, he's back to normal size. And then he puts the Scorpion suit back on, and he's tall again. So I do have to question, how exactly does that work? Is it a case of he puts the suit on and the radiation in the suit that's soaked in it makes him grow bigger again, or when he's out of the suit he turns back to normal size? It's very, very perplexing, because they never really explained it throughout the series. I might have to go back and check it out, but I don't think they ever explain how he gets in and out of the suit, because I was always under the impression, and I know he was, that he couldn't get out of the suit. So depending on who you ask, really, it is a bit strange. But I thought this was Scorpion's best look, the green skin, the fangs, yellow eyes, and he's just huge. And Scorpion was a guy I wanted to see in Spider-Man 4 with Tobey Maguire, because Jameson hadn't really had much to do in all 3 Spider-Man films, so this would have been a great opportunity to bring in the Scorpion for Spider-Man 4, and I think he would have looked excellent on the big screen in live action. But sadly it was never meant to be. But it's possible we could see him in the MCU one day, because Mack Gargan did make a cameo at the end of Spider-Man Homecoming when he shared a prison cell with Adrian Toomes, so there's a high chance we could see him. But the issue here is just weird. I mean, it doesn't frustrate me in that sense, because Scorpion was still a great villain and this was still a fantastic episode, but at the same time, just seeing him like this does confuse me a little bit, because how does he go back to normal and how does he change into that? But it is what it is. Shortly after, we see Jameson return to the Daily Bugle and sees a news report with Robbie about the Scorpion causing chaos throughout the city. And Jameson sits on the chair saying, "What have I done?" And Robbie says, "You? What have you got to do with this?" And Jameson very sadly says, "Robbie, I helped create the Scorpion." And Robbie, in shock of course, says, "You? Why would you even do such a thing?" And this is where we get the little flashback about what happened to Jameson's wife a long time ago. And then Robbie says, "Yeah, well, that same thing that you helped create is causing chaos throughout the entire city." And Jameson says, "I know, Robbie. I've made a terrible mistake." So it's kind of interesting because at the beginning of this episode, Jameson was so determined to have Spider-Man eliminated, but at a very heavy cost, because now Scorpion, the man that he helped create, is now causing chaos. So it's kind of sad that Jameson's not really a villain, but he did help contribute to the creation of the Scorpion, and now he feels responsible. So what I liked about this episode the most was Jameson had a very big part in this, and this was something that we would see in a number of other episodes over the course of season 1, but this was the first episode where Jameson was the main focal point of the story, and I quite enjoyed it. You know, it's nice to see that J. Jonah Jameson is showcased throughout the episode for a change, instead of seeing him always bashing Spider-Man. So yeah, it's really cool. So Jameson, you can see, is showing genuine remorse, like, I've made a terrible mistake, I really messed up big time. So it's going to be quite interesting to see how Jameson is going to put things right, which we'll get into momentarily. We then see Jameson go to the Empire State University and tell Stillwell to do something to stop the Scorpion. Dr. Stillwell explains that the effects of neogenics is making Scorpion mentally unstable, and then Stillwell goes on to explain that we should have listened to Kurt Connors about the dangers of testing neogenics on human beings, and at that moment we see the Scorpion crash through the wall and into the laboratory, begging Stillwell to cure him and change him back to normal. Stillwell then explains to the Scorpion that the process is irreversible, and Scorpion throws him across the room, and at that moment we see the Scorpion grow even more bigger. Yikes. And then Scorpion goes after Jameson because he believed he is this way because of him, and he says to him, "You, this is your fault. You want me to stay this way so I can take out Spider-Man. Well, guess what? I'm going to take you out instead." And then he grabs Jameson with his tail and runs off. Oh dear. Look at the state of Scorpion. He's bloody massive. Oh my god. Oh boy, I bet Jameson wished he never done this now. Oh jeez. Meanwhile, we see Spider-Man take a phone call to Aunt May in his Peter Parker voice, and he tells her that he won't be home for lunch. We then see May explain that Mary Jane's coming over to their house for lunch, and Peter says, "Yeah, I know, but the traffic is really terrible." And at that moment he sees Scorpion and says, "Look, Aunt May, I've got to go. Something's come up." And Peter says, "Unless I'm seeing things, I'm probably sure I saw the Scorpion with Jameson, or maybe I need to start wearing glasses again." And then we see Scorpion goes to, you guessed it, of all places, Oscorp. And Scorpion tells Jameson that he plans to use Oscorp's nuclear reactor to turn him back to normal. Jameson tells him that you're insane, and if you breach the nuclear reactor, you'll destroy the entire city. And Scorpion says, "Not my problem, long as I get what I want, and quit calling me names." And then we see Spider-Man arrive and knocks the Scorpion through the hold and grabs Jameson before he can fall through the hall of Oscorp's roof. Spider-Man uses a web line to lower himself and Jameson into Oscorp, and Spider-Man says, "A nuclear reactor? What is it with supervillains and nuclear reactors? Why can't they ever rob bakeries?" And then we see Spider-Man is attacked by Scorpion. However, Spider-Man manages to dodge one of Scorpion's punches, and Scorpion accidentally hits a switch on a computer that starts the nuclear meltdown, releasing the neutron-absorbing control rods. And Spider-Man explains that if the pressure gets too high, the reactor will melt down and flood the entire city with radiation. Spider-Man sees a big giant red button and says, I bet that red button is the one that stops it. Trust me when I say this. It's always the red button. And Jameson says, how the hell do you know all this stuff anyway? And Spider-Man very sarcastically looks at Jameson and says, who do you think I am? The Tick? And then we see the Scorpion begins to pound at a big metal door in an attempt to get to the nuclear core. Spider-Man grabs Scorpion by his tail, but Scorpion flings him across the room. However, Spider-Man is able to cling to the wall. As Jameson runs over to the computer console, he raises his hand to hit the button. However, Scorpion grabs Jameson's hand with his tail. Jameson attempts to convince Scorpion to let him go to save the city. However, Scorpion is only concerned with getting to the reactor and throws Jameson across the room. Jameson is then caught by Spider-Man, and Spider-Man sarcastically once again says, if we keep meeting like this, tongues are going to start wagging big time. We then see Spider-Man's attacked by the Scorpion. However, Scorpion grabs Spider-Man and starts to squeeze him in a bear hug, tighter and tighter, and then Jameson tackles Scorpion to the ground, and Scorpion drops Spider-Man, and Scorpion asks Jameson, why in the hell would you risk your life to save him? And Jameson says, whether I like him or not, he's the only one who can stop you right now. And Spider-Man looks up and says, really? Jameson's actually defending me now? He's actually on my side now? And then as Scorpion goes over to kill Spider-Man, Jameson starts calling Scorpion names, which distracts him long enough to Spider-Man to get to the controls. However, Scorpion is able to run over and push him out of the way. Spider-Man gets an idea on how to defeat Scorpion, and then he begins to start calling him names. And Scorpion gets really angry and he tries to hit Spider-Man with his tail. However, Spider-Man reaches inside the computer that was damaged by Scorpion's acid and pulls out some wires. And as soon as Scorpion's tail touches the electricity, he is electrocuted throughout his entire body. This distracts Scorpion long enough for Jameson to run over and push the red button. Well, who'd ever thought that? Jameson the hero. And then Scorpion then collapses on the floor and Spider-Man webs him up and says, oh, my aching head. And Spider-Man says, speak for yourself, pal. I'm suffering from double vision. Get it? Double vision? And Scorpion, in a very drained voice, says, oh, I knew I shouldn't have left Brooklyn. Oh, never mind. And then we see Spider-Man extend his hand to Jameson and says, thanks for having my back there, Jameson. And thanks for saving my life. I guess things will be different between me and you now. And Jameson slaps his hand and says, not a chance. This doesn't change a damn thing between me and you. I won't rest until you're eliminated and unmasked. And Spider-Man says, fine. Then I won't rest until you shave that stupid moustache off, so we're even. Oh, and Jameson, one more thing. Thanks for saving my life back there. And Jameson says, oh no. It's kind of funny, isn't it? Jameson is the guy who created the Scorpion to take out Spider-Man, and at the end of it he ends up saving Spider-Man. So really and truly, Jameson turned out to be the real hero in the end. Who'd ever thought that? J. Jonah Jameson, of all people, the hero and the guy who saved Spider-Man. Good stuff. We then see Spider-Man swinging through New York and compares Jameson saving his life to Moriarty saving Sherlock Holmes, and he says life is definitely full of surprises. And then later that night we see Peter Parker is leaving the ESU and we see Felicia Hardy drive up to him and says, Parker, you're very unpredictable. I didn't take kind to the fact that you left me all alone, but I think you was trying to tell me something. You was trying to tell me that I'm very difficult. And that's fine, but we can have lunch together, maybe as friends. Ciao, Parker. And then as she drives away, Peter begins to think maybe Felicia is starting to actually like me. Yep, life is definitely full of surprises, and that ends the sting of the Scorpion review. Overall, excellent episode. Apart from that little issue that my friend had regarding Mack Gargan's transformation into the Scorpion and back into his human form. But aside from that, this was still a fantastic episode and definitely in my top 10 favourites of Season 1, and hopefully my friend enjoyed listening to me talking about this classic Spider-Man episode. And that's it from me. I'm going to wrap this up now. What did you think of the sting of the Scorpion episode? Did you enjoy it? What were your thoughts on J. Jonah Jameson turning out to be the guy who actually saved Spider-Man? What about Mack Gargan's issues regarding his transformation into the Scorpion and the fact that he complained about being trapped in the suit? Did you think that was a little bit confusing, or was you okay with that aspect of the Scorpion? What were your thoughts on Jameson's past being addressed in this episode? Did you think Jameson had good reason for hating Spider-Man so much? And what were your thoughts on his motivations for creating the Scorpion? And did you enjoy Jameson having a much bigger role in an episode of the Spider-Man animated series? You know what to do, guys. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave your thoughts and comments down below, and I will be back next time for another edition of the Spider-Man review series, where I'll be talking about another favourite episode of mine from Season 1. So until next time, take care everybody, and stay safe.